welcome back to the latest episode of the Master of None podcast. I am your host, as always, Stephen Murphy. We're joined by the two rugby crew of Jonathan West and Sam Iredale, whatever your last
I love
name
that
is.
I love that it's Sam when it clearly says Corey on the screen.
Oh no!
Oh yeah,
I've been waiting to say that for so long.
You've been rinsed.
How do you change that, Yoke?
Don't worry, it's too late. Everyone knows your girlfriend's name now, so you're screwed. Yeah, you got a girlfriend. What a loser. Lads, it's a fantastic day to talk some rugby. We had two good games at the weekend. Massive Irish squad announcement today for the Six Nations, which was, you know what, lads, it wasn't controversial. There wasn't really many talking points. We'll probably just touch on it for 2 minutes and move on, like everything else.
That's what Twitter's doing all day. That's what.
Oh, Twitter. From like 10 to 11 a.m. this morning, I was just on Twitter. I wasn't working at all.
And then there's all the ex-pros with the like throwing petrol on the fire, being like, nothing really wrong with this squad, and you're like,
O'Driscoll was like, I'm sure there's lots of negativity around the squad, like making fun of it. It was like, yeah, there is, Brian. He's had
a peculiar kind of couple of weeks with Twitter, though. That weird Sexton thing as well, where he was like defending a very weird thing for Sexton. Like, it's like, we know Sexton's a good captain. It doesn't need to be brought up for the most minimal of reasons. Like, that's nothing to do with
for kicking a score, basically.
Yeah, like it was so strange, but sure.
But we will start with Munster Leinster, which was on Saturday night. Was a good game, but again, Leinster come out on top and get the win, but Munster let another amazing opportunity sort of slip through their fingers to beat Leinster, which is a real shame. But Munster started well, Westy, good physicality, good aggression, get out. Ty Burns scores a nice try early on. Are you sitting at home thinking this is it, Munster's going to do it? Yeah,
I think around the half-time mark, probably just before that second Johnny Sexton penalty, I kind of was thinking, Jesus, this is a Munster performance that'll do it, because they had kind of really pulled Leinster into a Munster game. It was very physical, real arm wrestle. Like, I've seen some criticism on it, like from pundits over the last kind of 48 hours about it. Okay, maybe it's not a game for the casual fan, but like I couldn't look away from the screen for 80 minutes. Really, it was head to head. It was like such small margins. Again, you look back, a couple of penalties go a different way, and it was an opportunity there to be taken from Munster.
Oh, I wasn't going to bring it up until later on, but as someone who hasn't been a JJ Hanratton fan for quite a while now, again, two penalties that have been missed. One was not easy by any accounts, but it's incredible how it swings in the game. Like, right in the stroke of halftime, JJ Hanratton has a penalty to go 13-3 up into halftime, hits the post, Leinster come down, get a penalty in pretty much the exact same spot on the other side of the field. Sexton nails it. It's then 10-6 at halftime. Then JJ misses a sitter pretty much in the first few minutes of the second half, which was really easy, a really sitter for him. And if he hits them both, they get to 16 points, and Leinster win this game without reaching 16 points. And it is those kind of margins that we've been sort of we've been criticizing JJ for a long time now, and it just seems to be a regular thing, Sam. Like, do you know where I'm coming from? That's tough as a Munster fan to keep seeing that.
Yeah, it's a familiar enough feeling for us Connacht fans, because be it his open play ability, I'm not like I don't rate him too highly, but it's not really what's in question. In question is his mentality and that clutch kicking thing. And if you're relying on your 10 as the kicker, which most teams do, not all teams, like Ulster are different. Some people get other people to kick, but if you are relying on your 10 as your kicker, those clutch kicking points, they're so important, and missing those kickable ones can just be absolutely demoralizing for fans and teams. The swing from the miss on the stroke of halftime, hitting the post, and then Leinster marching down and getting their own score, it swung the game completely in terms of what they would have gone in. Was it 16-6 up or 16-3 up? I can't even remember how
they would have been 16-3 up if you had.
It would have been 16-3 up instead of 10-6. Instead of how did they go in then at halftime?
They would have been 10-6 up at halftime, so they would have been 13.
Yeah, they
were up at halftime.
13-3 up. Sorry.
But then if JJ kicks the penalty in the second half early on, they would have been 16.
Then they get up to 16. Yeah, so it's like that. Those are the sort of moments. Both kickable kicks. Like obviously some kicks are more difficult than comes across to us on watching on TV and stuff. But I think that you really want to be relying on your kickers for those sort of kicks, and that's the sort of stuff that will bring him down in the eyes of like international selectors. And I don't think in the long run he's really Munster's starting 10. I think, in the long run it might be Healy, it might not, see how he develops. But I think that the Munster fans are all praying to God that Carberry can come back fitter and stronger and stay in that team, because they don't have the confidence in him, and it's moments like that really lose that confidence that you can have in players. Like he's had good games, and there's plenty of Munster fans that like him, but there's plenty of Munster fans that liked Keatley as well, Keatley, and it's just, if you're missing kicks like that, it's just, you can't rely on them.
Yeah, exactly. And as you said, open play, he's really good player and all that, but it just seems to be when it comes down to the big moments, he just seems to shy away from them possibly. But Westy, I remember looking at the clock at one stage, I think it was 65 minutes in the game, and I looked up at the scoreboard expecting Munster to be so far ahead, and they were only 4 points up. They dominated a lot of this game, but they just couldn't seem to get over the line. Again, is that them failing to convert, or is that just good defense from the Leinster team?
Well, I think first off you have to say that the Leinster defence was very good. The only thing better was probably Tadhg Byrne, i.e. the Munster defence. No, I think it maybe is probably is Munster maybe not taking the opportunities they had. Like they didn't score in the second half, and I've said it before. Like, you're not going to win a game by going half an hour without scoring points. Like it is a numbers game. It's about keeping that scoreboard ticking over, especially against a team like Leinster. Can be so dangerous. Like, they scored a try out of nothing, really. Now, that was some great play from the players involved, but it was, I would say it was very against the run of play. Even the fact that it was quite free flowing with a lot of offloads, like that wasn't a game that was being played. So I just think, maybe one or two. Okay, we talked about the kicks already. That one at halftime, particularly because it's a 6-point swing, and then a big difference going into the dressing rooms with no points on the board. Leinster would have been no points on the board had they not got that penalty. But yeah, I think probably a bit of game management getting away from Munster a little bit. I think they probably had a very specific game plan, which was to turn it into a dogfight. But they weren't kind of able to break away from that when they probably should have.
Yeah, and you mentioned Tadhg Byrne again. He had just an incredible game of turnovers that he has absolutely no right of winning. Sam, you brought up a good point today in our WhatsApp group. He keeps being called small for international level or undersized, when everything we see with him at Munster, he's the opposite. He's a man mountain. He's physical. He's incredible at the turnover. Why is he called undersized? But in fairness, he hasn't stood up like that in a green jersey. Are we expecting him to take that next step now with the Six Nations?
I definitely think he has the ability to. I don't understand why he would be criticised for not being big enough, unless the game plan you want to impose is to have a one-up runner second row and not have all the other skills that he brings to the game, the turning over ability, good hands. He's not small. Like, he's definitely not a small man. He always looks one of the biggest on the pitch. So I don't understand how people are saying he's not big enough for international. Interestingly enough, I'm actually reading a book at the moment about the All Blacks and the history of New Zealand rugby. And one of the things that the person who wrote it, who's from New Zealand, was criticising the Northern Hemisphere about was how there's way too much emphasis on size and way too much emphasis on like being a brute. And they talked about how France's decline in the last kind of 10 years up until 2 years ago was due to the fact that they stopped playing rugby and started just having big smash players and overemphasizing on size, especially in that second row and in the centres. And I think that that's kind of one of the things is I think there's a narrative that your second rows have to be like the biggest possible person and that their entire job is to just be big. And I think that Tadhg Byrne is the type of player that just, he kind of refutes that. And he's like, he might not necessarily be as big big and brutish as maybe an English second row would be, or a South African second row would be, but he has so much to offer that I don't think that you can say, oh, he's not big enough for international rugby. I think you have to change your mentality about what you want from a second row, because himself and Ryan, and then with like the likes of Baird coming in, obviously being biased, like Olsen and Quinn and Gavin Thornbury, I think there's a lot of really good second rows, but I think he is definitely head and shoulders above all of them in terms of what he can bring from turnover point of view. The last 2 weeks, the Connacht match and the Leinster match, he was just unstoppable on the ground. And it's something that you can't pay enough for that on an international pitch. To get the ball back, to win the ball is more important, I think, than to be able to go an extra yard off the base of a ruck or off the base of a kind of a slow ball play.
And they're never
Two of those
in the middle
turnovers
of,
are literally on the try line as well.
I was going to say, they're never in the middle of the
literally
field. They're always a Connacht game on the try line. There was 2 in that Leinster game on the try line. He's like, middle field, I'm not even going to bother going for it. There's no point.
But it's not
Leinster,
like he's not a small guy, as you say. He doesn't look out of place anywhere. I think, as Sam said, like, we're looking for an enforcer. I think it's one of the things that keeps the likes of Quinn Roux, getting picked. Is because he's that kind of brutish South African second rows. They're built somewhere in a factory, I don't know, in Johannesburg. I'm not sure where they come from. John Kleinman, a similar kind of player as well. But I think, like, the idea would be that
issue with Devon Toner, and he was in no way an enforcer. Like, people are still calling for him to be in the Irish squad, and Ty Burns far more effective in every aspect of the game except for being 6'10".
That's a skill, Sam. It's a skill.
Learned that one from the best.
Yeah. Westy, we've seen with Leinster, they didn't have a good 80 minutes here. They haven't played a really good 80 minutes in a long time, but they have the capability with the firepower they have for that Larmour try, where it's a bit of a spark for brilliance for Ross Byrne between Keenan and Larmour to finish it off. Are Leinster fans, should they be worried that we haven't seen a really good 80 minutes in a long time?
Yeah, but they haven't lost, though.
Yeah, I know.
I'd agree with you. It's kind of like let's go back to what we were saying about the Crusaders. We said the exact same thing about the Crusaders in the Super Rugby. They seem to just be getting through games in third and fourth gear for a lot of time and eking out the win. Leinster are kind of a similar thing. They haven't had to kind of turn on the afterburners really in any game so far. So, I mean, like, first off, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But you would be a little bit nervous because you haven't seen anything that would say that if you have to play Saracens again in the European Cup final, you don't have anything new really to bring to that game. It's probably going to be the same fallout as it was before.
Yeah, exactly. And Munster side of things, how devastating of a loss was this for Munster fans? Because it was built up all week that this is the chance. Munster really have a good chance here because of Leinster's kind of shaky enough starts and Munster have been in good form, and then to lose like that without really, after scoring the 10 points, to not score again. Which is really tough. Like, how tough would that be, Westy, for those Munster fans? How bad of a loss is that? I
think mentally it's pretty tough, because even, again, and correct me if I'm wrong, but during the summer when they played, it was a relatively similar affair where, like, Munster were kind of thereabouts for most of the game. I think in a lot of ways that can be a lot more detrimental than kind of losing by a try or two, because if you lose by a try or two, you go, right, lads, it wasn't our day, fair enough. But a game like that, Munster will beat Leinster at some point in the next 3 or 4 years, but the sooner that floodgate cracks, the sooner, like, Munster are going to be genuine title contenders in the Pro 12 or whatever it's called, the Pro 17, 18, 19, whatever the hell it's called.
Pro Infinite.
Yeah, and European rugby, they're going to have to get this kind of monkey off their back, as they say.
And the longer it goes on as well, the more
exactly.
It'll be. Yeah, exactly. What do you think, Sam? Munster, a tough loss?
Yeah, they'll be really, really annoyed by it. I think that they were, I was watching it going, oh, this is Munster's game all day. But the fact that they let Leinster stay in the game, and Leinster defended brilliantly, but the fact that they let Leinster stay in the game and give them the opportunity to snatch the win will be something they'll be really annoyed about. And it's also something that, Connacht were one bad decision away from doing the same 2 weeks ago. They didn't put the foot on the throat when they were clearly in control of either game. And that's something that they will really rue. Like, they'll really, really regret that, because Connacht were a bad decision against 13 men away from snatching a victory in a game that Munster had looked like controlling most of the game, because they defended really well. And it was the same with Leinster. So maybe they lack a little bit of imagination in order to build up the scores, because they, without Hanrahan kicking, they needed maybe another score or two on the ground, and it didn't come. And then you're never going to be writing off. Like, I think Leinster could go, much like Crusaders in the Super Rugby, I think Leinster could go into the last 10 minutes of any game and turn over a deficit of 15, 20 points. Like, they have that ability. They have that amount of skill. Like, if you're looking at a back line with Larmour, Sexton, Henshaw, Keenan, like McGrath, like people on the bench as well, like the Gibson Parks or whoever else you want, even the Ronan Kelleher's, there's so much talent there and there's so much athletic ability. I think that like if Leinster are within touching distance in the last 10 minutes, they'll bank on their ability, their kind of experience of winning, their superior athleticism, their superior benches. I think that all those things are just like, you really need to just shut them out. You need to have them killed by 50, 60 minutes, or I think Leinster will back themselves to win each time. And Munster are definitely going to regret that. It's a big issue for the league. I know Connacht beat Leinster, but the fact that Leinster look like they can kind of still really not get out of third gear and not be tested like they were tested a little bit there. But, the league wants to kind of prove itself, but Leinster will go into a semi-final or a final in Europe against a team that plays more competitive in France or in England, and they'll get beaten because they're not being tested enough. And that's being reflected in Irish performances the last year or two as well, I think. So I don't know what you do to remedy that, but it's not great for the league to watch Leinster kind of walk through games and still manage to grab a winning try away in their biggest rivals' stadium. Like,
yeah, look, when you play Leinster, you can't leave any points on the table, and they did that, and they regretted it. But we'll move on after a tough loss from Munster. Connacht Ospreys, which is on Sunday at 3:00. This was one of the most frustrating games I think we've watched all year in terms of for fans of Connacht. And Connacht rugby kind of is summed up at the moment in the sentence that they played flawlessly against Leinster and bet them, and then yesterday far from flawless and lost to Ospreys. This game was the first half. We'll talk about the first half first. Connacht started very well. Open few minutes, a lot of physicality, a lot of aggression. Really started with intent, but then get turned over and Ospreys goes up and score. A nice try by North in the corner, lovely hands. Conor Fitzgerald, who was getting started 10, really started quite shakily. A lot of passes that weren't really on that he tried, a few kicks that weren't really on. He kind of got settled later in the game, but like Westy, Connacht, watching the first half, you were pretty confident, I would say, especially going into halftime, getting that try on the stroke of halftime. That second half, they would go on and push on and get the win.
Yeah, and I don't know if I definitely said it a couple of times to people at halftime. I was like, we're ahead, but we don't deserve to be ahead. Like, God knows how we're actually ahead because we weren't playing it. We weren't really taking our chances. Again, like the first try came from a beautiful like pickup of a loose ball between Wooten and Fitzgerald, and resulted in like a great try by all accounts, but like very much, I say, against the run of play. The other try, okay, a little bit smarter, big boiler breaking over off the back of a scrum. Like, I don't know, like I kind of thought that, right, we're ahead, we don't really deserve it. Like, there'll be a stern talking to in a change room, like, we're lucky to be ahead, let's start playing a bit smarter, tighten up, and we'll see this game out. And that's the exact opposite of what we did.
Yeah, I think that's a good. Yeah, Sam, that first half, do you agree, Westy, sort of ahead but not really playing that well?
To an extent, I agree. I do think that it was much like kind of a conversation we had about the Munster match, where I think Connacht, just because they're not playing beautifully cohesive, free-flowing, attacking rugby, doesn't mean that we weren't, like, outside of that try, weren't extremely good in defence in the first half. Like, the defensive maul aside, I think that our structure was brilliant, our tackling was great. We forced errors, really up sharp. I thought Rob and Daly in the centre were aggressive and physical, and I thought that we kind of shut them out and capitalised and managed to get ourselves ahead. I don't think we were spectacular by any sense of imagination, but I wouldn't be kind of saying we didn't deserve to be ahead. I don't think we deserve to be that far ahead, but I think that we played it. We had a smart game plan, and one try aside, we were good. We were defending well, and that kept us in the game. And that's kind of similar to, we defended well against Ulster and Leinster and Munster in the last few weeks. I think defensively we've looked pretty good. But like Westy said, I think that there was another gear that we definitely could have stepped up into, and I thought that the halftime ability to analyse what was going wrong on attack, get a little bit of cohesion, new centre pairing might have been an issue there, but I thought we'd see a bit more kind of control in the game from an attacking point of view in the second half, and it didn't come, and we just kind of ended up capitulating. Really, there looked like frustration all over the pitch in the second half. It was quite distressing to watch. Like, I didn't agree with a lot of things that happened with the ref. I don't blame the ref for the loss, but I blame him for a lot of things that couldn't get going. There was some questionable calls around the scrum. There was about 5 minutes of time spent. Like, even the girlfriend was watching going, this is so boring, because we watched 5 minutes of scrums being reset and refs saying really weird things to, like, Jared Butler asked what to do and he got snapped at by the ref. It was very unprofessional. And then there was like times when he said use it and didn't penalise, and times when the scrum was clearly being dominated and he just let it reset. So the whole thing was very stop-start. It was very hard to kind of watch, and it was frustrating one to come away from, especially because it was a strong Ospreys team. And I know we weren't great, but that strong Ospreys team was there for the taking, even on a bad day, which is something that you could be quite proud of Connacht for, getting to a position where they can have an off day and still only be, that one or two non-missed tackles or better decisions made, and you'd be beating a good strong Ospreys team. Like,
there's a worrying trend that we have. Sorry to jump in, there's a worrying trend that we have of, like, you say the defense been solid, but like this game and the Bristol game, it definitely happened earlier in the season as well. We concede tries when we're playing against 14 men. Like, I don't know what happens. Like, we think it's going to be easy and just massive gaps open up all over the place. Like, how did we have a 2-man overlap against 14 men? It was ridiculous. Like,
yeah, it's frustrating. I think defensively, I'm not saying that we're perfect. I think there's still open field missed tackles and there's still kind of mistakes like that. But I think that from going to Connacht games last 5-6 years, from watching like the highs of Pat Lam to the lows of Kieran Keane, I think that the defensive structure has definitely, to me, looked like it's developing into something that has an idea, because I thought we were completely out of ideas a year and a half, 2 years ago in terms of defense. We were all over the place all the time and tries were being scored for fun. Whereas I think that even in a game where we weren't good, like, we weren't very good, we were still in with a chance of beating a very strong Ospreys team. We were still, dominating breakdowns and tackles at points as well. Like, and that's something I think that is definitely working on and being worked on. But it's disappointing to throw away another opportunity there, because an Ospreys win or a Munster win in the last 2 weeks, and we would have been sitting really pretty in the league table, and the league table would have looked very good for us. So it's quite disappointing game. I thought there was a few decent performances from a couple of players. It was good to see Boyle back. Thought he linked up well with Marmion. He was quiet enough, but he did well. I thought Oliver was good again. I've been very impressed with him. And I think Gavin Thornbury will get onto the Irish team, but I think he could actually feel quite aggrieved that, two of his Connacht team are ahead of him in the Irish squad, where I think he definitely has been probably the best of the second rows in Connacht for a good year and a half now.
Yeah, 100%. But getting back to the kind of thing, I think though, Sam, the attitude of, like, where it's great to be still within a shout at the end of the game, and and all that sort of stuff. I think Connacht have to start moving on from that. Like, these are not. Sometimes you get bet off the pitch, and that's fair enough. But these aren't games that Connacht are getting bet off the pitch, and it's mental errors or small errors that are stopping Connacht getting these wins. Like, if Connacht had a bit more. Like, when they're in playing, especially going forward, they look like everything's panicky. I was saying these in the WhatsApp. Everything looks like, it's quick ball, and it's sort of like, oh, let's try this, rather than here's a clear plan, here's what we're doing, a bit of calmness about them. And I thought maybe Marmion coming back into the starting lineup would sort of calm things down, but it didn't really. But they look kind of rudderless. They look kind of, there's not much leadership going on, and we saw that later on when Big Papa came on and he really made an impact early physically, but Connacht win a penalty where they need a score, and he taps and goes from the halfway line, where, like, I feel like some sort of leader, Bundy or Marmion, or if Carter was on the pitch, maybe he would do it, but say, like, put the ball down, let's kick to the corner or something here. Like, tap and go is a bit, again, panicky. It's more of an instant reaction to doing something rather than we know what the system is here.
The worst part of that is it's not an instant reaction. It's a good 10 seconds after the penalty is given. Ospreys are back on side. There's nothing really to gain from him doing it. And nobody else seems to know that that's what's happening either.
The support is lacking to get there, because they're like, I can't believe he's gone.
it looks to me very, very much like a rugby league set play that he just kind of, just almost like a brain fart, to be honest, because I thought he was good. Other than that, when he came on, he had a positive.
Oh, he's brilliant. He come on, he nails someone early. Like, he's that physicality that kind of you're lacking sometimes. He was brilliant. But, small mental errors like that is what caused. He kind of could have had the last month wins over Bristol, Munster, Ulster, and Leinster, but they killed themselves. You know what I mean? So I think to get to that next level of the Munsters and Leinsters, they have to be called out. Like, you seen Leinster, Caelan Doris give away a stupid penalty. Where he sort of stood there and gave away a penalty for JJ's penalty at the end. And Scott Fardy, you can see on the TV, he's eating ahead of him. He's giving out to him, being like, that was ridiculous. Is that in Connacht? Are these like calls? Are these stupid decisions being called out by other players in the team?
I don't know. Like it's you would have to look at your leadership group. You'd hope that they are. You'd hope that there's enough experience there that they are. I just got like I'm just kind of clarify what I'm saying. Like I'm very, very disappointed with all of those losses, like you've said. But if I'm looking at it from a point of view of having looked up the hill that we had to walk up, we're now at that last little bit. And I think that those small errors, that leadership, that can be taught, I think. But, there was a lot further to go a couple of years ago. And we're now at the last bit. And it's those tiny little margins that allow you to beat Munster and Bristol and Ospreys. That is a good tiny little margin to have, considering where we were coming out of the back here in Keane. And I think that, if Friendy signs on again, the good that we've seen him do climbing up the first 3 quarters of the hill, I think that he can get us over that. I think players like Arnold and Oliver and Boyle, and and even Wooten are coming in with experience. This season has been very stop-starty. Like, you have Peter Robb playing his first game, having looked like he trained about twice. Tom Daly's had about 6 different centre partnerships. Fitzgerald's playing his first game, having come back from a long injury. Like, I think that this season's been so stop-starty that cohesion's not really there. But I do genuinely believe that you've seen a lot of positives coming out of it. I'm not trying to make excuses for the losses. What I'm saying is, from a point of view, like, I don't think we're that far off it. We've gone toe-to-toe with some of the bigger teams. And if you look at the league table, there's such a massive gap between the top 3 and ourselves and Ospreys, and then the rest kind of underneath. I think that we are kind of the ones, ourselves and Ospreys are the ones that look like that they can make that step up, and it doesn't seem too far away. Whereas I'm looking at Edinburgh at the moment, the Italian teams are a farce. At Cardiff, I don't think, like Dragons, I don't think any of them look like they're anywhere near making the step up. That's why I'm saying I'm still positive. And I think that, like, I know he made a mistake, but I think that Boyle in the next few years will be that type. He's an Irish underage captain. He'll be the type that, like you said, Fardy, reefing someone out of it. But he's just too young to kind of do it yet. I think that you might have Bundy on the pitch. Maybe he'd be the type to do it, but he's only coming back from an injury. So it's quite stop-starty. It's quite disappointing, the fact that we've thrown away a few games that, you'd look at beforehand going, imagine getting a win against them. And that is unfortunate. But I firmly believe that if, like, Friendy does sign on, like he said that he wants to, for another few years, that development is coming, and that team, I really like the look of the team. I like kind of the way that we look like we're going and the way we look like we're going about it, because we are, it's sounds like an excuse, but it's hard with the resources you have to build a competitive team. And we're stepping up to the Leinsters and Munsters and Ulsters, Bristols and Racings in the last few weeks. That's a positive way to look at it. Like, I do think that you have to be positive about it.
Yeah, no, I agree. Westy, what is your take?
I kind of agree with something Sam said there. I think I said to you guys earlier as well, like, I don't see kind of enough cohesion in the team. Like, our best moments are in broken play. They're kind of like, how many intercept tries have we scored this season? Like, I thought our open space tackling, I think our first time tackling was very poor against Ospreys, but we're making those scramble defense tackles, and we're saving ourselves once kind of play breaks up a little bit. And I think that's interesting. The point that COVID raises is, like, we did have a lot of players come into the squad last year. The likes of Conor Oliver, Wooten, Sullivan, even Papali'i coming off the bench. Like, these are all, like, brand new players in the squad. And I think maybe the training setups are, just because it's not a normal season, these lads probably can't hang out together as much as you'd like to. Maybe that's a kind of factor that's just stopping us from really kind of getting that, like, cohesiveness that we need. And, like, the shining example of is the fact that we cannot hold a defensive maul together.
Yeah, that's a good point. That has been a constant throughout. And even with Thornbury back in, with Rue, Delan, whatever the personnel, it seems to be the same issue, that it just can't. Even the scrum in the first half was dominant. They were winning penalties galore. And in the second half, they lose a scrum penalty to 7 men. And it just seems to, again, that's not physical. I think that, as you said, Wes, that has to be something else going on, because that's not right. Do you know?
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And I think, again, as I'm chalking some of it down to new faces and uncertainty and, lack of rhythm for the season. But, as you said, like, in the last 2 months, we could have beaten Racing, we could have beaten Bristol, we could have beaten Munster. I'd say the only one there we kind of deservedly lost was probably the Ulster game.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Well, Munster
Munster as well, kind of,
yeah. But I know, but like,
but I mean, I just leave out the Munster one, because we were literally on the line against 30 men and could have won it.
Yeah, but again, that brings up the point of small errors in decision making, and it's obviously upon reflection, they're easy decisions to make. Obviously, in the heat of the moment's different. And Sam, you are right. It is a positive to think that you are that close to that level, but obviously it is frustrating at the same time that it's you would think fairly basic decision making or like a maul defense. These boys are professional rugby players who have are more than capable of being good at defensive maul. It's just something isn't clicking. So it's positive and frustrating at the same time.
Our defensive maul has been an issue all season. Ospreys also, like, from looking at their fan Twitter, maul seems to be the thing that they like hang their hat on being good at as well. So it was probably something that Ospreys go, we're very good and they're struggling very badly at. So let's like really knuckle down on this. I think the likes of Papali, and I know he's injured as well, but Paddy McAllister, these are slightly bigger players. One thing that we've not had in the last few years is a big pack. We've had a skillful, smaller kind of pack. And I think that there's a good mix of both there. If you get Papali back in, I think Boyle is a bit of a unit. Having Jared Butler back in is kind of a good thing as well. So, you might see an improvement in that, but I think that just comes, I harp back again to cohesion, to stop starting season, to, players in and out with injuries, with COVID, with international calls up. This season is so strange. I think if we can just get through it, to be perfectly honest, and sign on Andy Friend for another 3 years, hopefully, I think that we can definitely begin to grow, because I really do see shoots of something very good there. It's just, like you said, it's the small margins that need to be improved, not the big picture stuff. Like, if we were where we were under Kieran Keane right now, I'd be very negative, but I'm not. I'm positive because I'm seeing such an improvement the last few years.
Yeah, I think if you're listening to this, tweet Andy Friend and tell him to come on the Master of None podcast, and we can discuss this. I do want to get him on, so do tweet him, see what he says. We'll move on. Obviously, the Irish squad was announced today, which was great if you're into making content and podcasts, which is fantastic. So we'll not go through obviously the whole squad because that would be boring to listen to. But the major kind of story points are from people who are actually added to the squad. We've got Tom O'Toole and Craig Casey coming in as uncapped players. Good to see. I'm happy to see Reece Ruddock come in. I think that's deservedly over the last. I don't think he was actually great against Munster the other day, but the last 2 months he's been, I think, spectacular. Stuart McCluskey comes back in, which I don't think a lot of people saw coming. Shane Daly kind of keeps his place as well. Tyke Furlong, lads, has been added. I think we'll start with Tyke Furlong because I'm a big Tyke Furlong fan. Don't get me wrong. I think when in form, he's one of the few Irish players that would make any team in the world. But he has not played in 11 months, and now he's back into potentially his first game back being a test rugby match in the Six Nations. Westy, how do we feel about that?
I actually think it's pretty shocking, to be honest. Like, you can't talk about player welfare and then put a player. It'll be a year. It'll have been in a calendar year by the time he actually gets onto the pitch, and he hasn't played a game of contact rugby. Like, we don't even have confirmation of when he'll be available. Like, first off, I think the main problem is, again, his own welfare. Like, look at what they've done with Dan Levy. They've managed him really well, and there's even people outraged that he's not in the Ireland squad. But I'm happy enough because I think he's building quietly in the background and getting back to form. So for Furlong's own protection, I think it's a bad decision. You're going to put somebody who hasn't. I don't know how much Connacht training he's doing, but Connacht training is not the same as playing week in, week out rugby, and then you're another level up to play international rugby. And the other point is that how can we honestly say that we're going to pick players on form when you pick someone who hasn't played in a year? Like, I know he's not going to come. It's not going to be like that scene in Space Jam where the professionals lose their talent. Like, it's not going to be that. But like, you can't guarantee he's going to be at the same level. So how are you pick if he starts against Wales? Like, if I'm Andrew Porter, I'm booking a flight to France. I'm gone. I'm like, this is a farce.
Yeah, like, again, this is not an anti-Tyke Furlong thing. We love
Tyke Furlong.
But to expect him to come back to the level he was at is totally unfair on him and everyone around. Like, that is.
And I hope I'm wrong. I really, really hope I'm wrong. I'd love to see him come back. But it doesn't change the fact it's an awful idea, even if it works. Like,
Sam, I assume you're in agreement with this?
Yeah, I was happy to see that he was named until I really thought about it and went, no, you know what? It's ridiculous. I saw his name first thing, and obviously you see Tyke Furlong, you go, oh, great, finally he's back, because it's something that we've probably been missing is Tyke Furlong's ability. But like,
and then you're like, it's not 2018, it's 2021.
Then, like, if you're looking at his own welfare, yeah, maybe he's been completely signed off by all the physios in the world that he'll be okay, and that's fine. The Irish team are more privy to that information than we are. but you cannot in any way equate that to ability on the pitch. And he's a year off. He's going to be rusty. He hasn't properly scrummed against a league standard front row, let alone an international standard front row. Like I think that it's such a big risk, even if you can guarantee his fitness, which you can't. But I just think it's such a big risk to play a player that has 0 minutes in a year at any level. It's crazy. I think it's crazy. I really don't understand the thinking behind it, and I think that the message it sends to every other player in the country, regardless of your ability, you pick on form. And Tadhg Furlong on his day is Tadhg Furlong on his day. We know how good he is, but there are players that are playing week in, week out in his absence that aren't being picked now. And what are they going to say? They're going to turn around and be like, what's the fucking point? There's no way that we can walk out, an Irish management team can now walk out and say that they're picking on form, because it's just been completely proven with that and about 3 other selections that they're not picking in any way on form, and that they're picking, yes, maybe the best players for position, but these players you need to be playing games to be on form. Like Tadhg Furlong might not be the Tadhg Furlong we know.
But it's also like, if it was a position that we were really weak in, I'd be like, oh, I can kind of see it. But Andrew Poor has been fantastic.
Yeah.
Like, this is not a position where we're incredibly lacking. It was a real head scratcher for me personally, and I hope. But even they can pick a new squad after the first 2 games, right?
Well, see how it works is, so they go into a COVID confinement bubble now for the first 2 games, and they can add or remove from the squad. This is how I understand it from what I read today. You can add or remove from that squad after the second game, because there's like a 2-week break, so somebody can leave and somebody else can come in and isolate with the team, and however that's going to work, I'm not sure.
Yeah, so even the first 2 leave Furlong off, and then in a couple of weeks' time being like, okay, he's actually really back to full health, and be like, okay, we'll bring him in now or something. To add him for these first 2 games was just mind-boggling to me.
I wouldn't have been opposed to Ireland adopting the Eddie Jones, what he did with his squad for the England thing, and himself and the RFU came up with this 28-man squad with a shadow team, and the shadow team are to stay with their clubs, not come into the bubble, but know that they're on call. And I wouldn't have been opposed to him being involved in something like that to get games, because there will be games in the interim that he can use to build up ability, strength, natural kind of in-game fitness, all of these things that he's going to be lacking. It's a year since he played. It's crazy.
Yeah, 100%. That's the type of, again, hopefully we're wrong and he comes back to his best, and we are delighted to see that. The next big omission, obviously, we have to talk about is John Cooney, which, if anyone follows me on Twitter, will have seen I was quite active today in regards to my defense for John Cooney, just because I hate the fact that he's not on the team. And this is not a slight against Craig Casey. This is not a slight against Murray. I thought Murray was fantastic against Leinster. And Murray was always going to start. And I had accepted that. But the thoughts of Cooney coming on and adding to that last 20 minutes, possibly in a game where we need a bit of a spark, was exciting. Cooney has been back on form. Cooney had 2 games where he wasn't on form, and that was the 2 games in return after the COVID break. And people were saying that he'd lost his, he'd ruined his opportunity to be back on the Ireland team because of those 2 games. Whereas Conor Murray, that was his first good game in 2 years. And that was never in doubt at any stage. People are saying on Twitter today that maybe Conor Murray can adapt a different style of play, more of a running kind of play. But my response to that is, why would you try and mold Conor Murray into that when you have the best scrum half at that in Cooney available to you? And also, by the way, he's an incredible kicker as well. So we can take responsibility off. If we wanted to get rid of Sexton, we can bring in maybe a Billy Burns, who's more creative at the moment, and leave the kick into Cooney.
Jack Carty.
We'll get on to the mission of Jack Carty as well. But Westy, Cooney not making it. Look, I think unfortunately it was to be expected, because unfortunately he's just not in favour at all with Andy Farrell. But how bad of a decision is this, or do you think it's a good decision?
Well, I think it's a bad decision. I wasn't shocked. I actually didn't even notice he wasn't in the team, because I was like, oh well, of course he's not going to be in the team. I think he deserves to be in the team. I think he is still arguably the best scrum half in the country at the moment. What has he done? He's done something wrong here. He's not getting picked. As you say, he's out of favour. I think the thing that will irk some people is the fact that that Casey got in instead of him. When I'm kind of more surprised at Gibson Park, because correct me if I'm wrong, but Luke McGrath's been starting for Leinster lately. So you really kind of I just think it's a bit bizarre, to be honest with you. Now I understand that they've clearly gone for here's two reliable scrum halves, and here's a young lad who's probably going to get a couple of minutes here and there, rather than bringing, like, if you brought Murray, Cooney, and Marmy, and then you've got like three, well, I would say three scrum halves fighting for the position, but that's obviously not the way the RFU see it.
Yeah, and we have to mention Marmion as well. Also, not making the squad. So that's, you're basically saying by including Craig Casey that the second choice Munster scrum half is better than your starting Connacht and Ulster scrum half. So the narrative of Ulster and Connacht always being neglected, and Connacht especially, you're not doing much for that narrative by dropping those boys, and it's again, Gibson Park. I don't mind Gibson Park. I think he's very good. I think he's attacking and creative, which is what I like to see. And Casey can be too. I'm just saying, Casey hasn't won the job yet at Munster, so how can you say that he should be in an Ireland squad? And then people are throwing the argument like, look at Andy Farrell's looking at 2023 now as a World Cup, but that argument doesn't wash either, because you still have Johnny Sexton there who will start every game. And it's just, Cian Healy, and again, it's nothing against Cian Healy, but he's not going to be your starting loosehead come the World Cup. At least I fucking hope not.
Well, Cian Healy is the only one I have faith of that old guard to make it to the next World Cup, because if anybody can do it, it's him. It's certainly not Johnny Sexton.
He is. Yeah, he's a robot at this stage. But it's just, and so, Sam, do you want to speak obviously on Marmion as well? Because I think he can feel pretty hard done by too.
Yeah, I think Marmion could definitely feel hard done by. I think Cooney really, I think at this stage, the Irish thing is just looking ridiculous. He's quite clearly the most informed scrum half. Probably, I'm going to say, on form, he's the best scrum half in Ireland. I personally have Marmion ahead of him, on the two of them on form, but I think that what Cooney does for Ulster is that can't be compared to anyone. He's absolutely brilliant. But I think if this is the way it's going, if I was him, I would not in any way begrudge him. And if I was an Ulster fan, I wouldn't even begrudge him packing it in and moving to France, where he'll be appreciated as the quote-unquote le petit général, which is one of my...
Sick of that.
Well, what an original phrase, Sam. I've never heard that.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Oh, man. But I think that, I think Marmion could be hard done by. And I also, I don't want to be slating a young lad, because Craig Casey has been good for a couple of weeks, and he's played not ahead of, but he's been an able replacement for Conor Murray in the last couple of weeks as well, when he's been called on. But if you're looking and picking on form, and if you really wanted to push that narrative of bringing a young lad, I think that Blade has played. He has been the starter for Connacht for good portions of time when Marmion was out with injury, and then also when Marmion wasn't on form last year, and he's still also quite young. So I don't know why you wouldn't bring him into the squad. I think he probably deserves it. I don't like the fact that you can play 4 or 5 good games for Munster or Leinster and be instantly in with a chance, and you have to genuinely be an absolute world beater at Ulster or Connacht to get in with a chance, because I think that's really, it's not a good message to send out. Obviously, Craig Casey has a big future ahead of him. He's very enjoyable to watch. I feel that this is a premature selection. I think that it's a bit unfair on Cooney, Marmion, Blade. It is what it is. The Gibson Park thing, I prefer him to Luke McGrath. I think he's a better player. I think Luke McGrath is starting at the moment for Leinster more often than not, but I do think personally Gibson Park is a better player. And it's quite funny to watch the conflicted Leinster fans be really outraged at Luke McGrath being left out, but also trying to justify Gibson Park being in there, because you can only really have one, in my opinion. If you were the backup out half or the backup scrum half, and they're both Irish qualified, surely the starter has to go. But I know it's quite funny watching that kind of conflicted fume on Twitter. But yeah, exactly.
And on your point on Cooney going to France, 100%, go get paid loads of money, be the fucking man of the team, and show everyone. It'll be another Zebo situation, being like, oh, why can't we get Cooney back? And he'll be like, no, fuck you, you've had your chance. Go ahead, Cooney, get some nice suntan and fucking, I don't know, wherever, the south of France, do whatever you want, enjoy yourself. But Craig Casey again. Craig Casey isn't going to play heavy minutes in the Six Nations. He might get a few against Italy maybe, but come Wales game, he's not going to see the pitch.
I'd say he's there. I'd say he's in the squad more for experience than anything else. There's no, Andy Farrell used to name that group of young lads in the squad to get them exposure. There's none of that this time around. I'd say in Andy Farrell's mind, it's Murray starting, Gibbo on the bench, and then Casey is just there for experience in the squad. And again, maybe depending on how he trains, probably could get on against Italy for 10 or 15 minutes, or hell, I'd fucking start him against Italy if he's going to be in the squad all camp. And actually, actually try somebody else, as opposed to like, oh well, Murray's not available, so we guess somebody else to start. Like,
But this year above all years, that's a silly thing to be doing, because now Casey and Murray are both in an international bubble, so not available for Munster. Whereas in the past, you've been coming and going, no problem. But if they're going to be strict about this bubble stuff, we've seen English players refusing to go to the Six Nations and Italian players because of the bubbles. So if they're going to be strict about it, Casey and Conor Murray are both going into a bubble. Like, Munster don't have a starting scrum half now for a while, unless they decide to break the bubble and let Casey stay at Munster. But it's a strange one. Like, you'd think that this year above all others is the year to not do that, but who am I?
Yeah, it is. It is. Look, again, nothing against Craig Casey. We just think it's a bit premature, personally. Jack Carthy, another omission. We kind of, some rumors, not rumors, but we kind of speculated that maybe he had already got the nod that he was in the squad, because obviously he didn't play this weekend. But that obviously wasn't the case. No real word has come out if he was injured, has it? Or unless I missed it.
No, there's nothing official said.
Nothing yet.
And Farrell has stated about other injuries. So, like, there has been a discussion about injuries.
Maybe they just forgotten. They're like, Jack who? Oh, Carty. No idea. He's been, a mission of him. We have, I've seen on Twitter, we have James Lowe, Johnny Sexton, and Tadhg Furlong, who are still currently listed as injured and not fully healthy, and all are in the squad, which is weird. Johnny Sexton hasn't played a healthy game in God knows how long. He came off injured again at the weekend. He'll start against Wales. We're sort of in the Stone Age when we come to selection in Ireland, and that doesn't seem to be changing, does it, Westy?
No, I think like the Sexton thing, he went off injured early for Connacht, or against Connacht, went off injured early against Munster, he went off injured early in the All Nations Cup. I think, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a hamstring every time. So I just think it's such a wasted opportunity that, like, whatever, like, I know he's on his day, he's the best out half in the country. But when did he have his last day? When is the last time he was so clearly way better than everybody else? I'm not saying he had a great game against Scotland there before Christmas. He's had good games, but not times where you're like, oh, like, where did this lad come from? Do you know? It's just, it would have been a great opportunity to leave him off for the Six Nations, or even leave him off for the first two games and say, look, get yourself right. And then let's let Billy Byrne start this one, have Carthy on the bench, or Ross Byrne on the bench. I do think Ross Byrne played pretty well when he came on at the weekend, but at the same time, and look, he's had England a few times and they were tough games, but like, I haven't seen anything from Ross Byrne that makes me think he's better than Carthy or Burns. I think Burns has to be your go-to replacement at the minute.
I would hope that he's starting, but I don't think it's going to happen. But and look, if you are looking at 2023 World Cup, every minute that Sexton plays is a minute that we're not giving to a potential starter for that World Cup. Because I think everyone understands he's not going to go to that World Cup. I don't think Sexton knows that, and hopefully Andy Farrell knows that. But if you're going to argue that point that they are looking ahead, then you can't give him much game time because he's not going to be there, and it's just frustrating again as a fan that we are like this, that we're not like, we're going to play the same. Like, let's talk about play style. We're obviously not going to be switching too much up when it comes to play style when our most creative players that we possibly have in the likes of Jack Carty, John Cooney, have been left at home. Like, Sam, that's obviously, we're going to be playing similar to what we have been playing for the last couple of years.
I'm going to withhold kind of any comment on that, because I do think that
your withhold is rejected. Give me
I think I was kind of pleasantly surprised.
Withhold for his own podcast, Master of Some, starts next week.
I think I was kind of pleasantly surprised with some of the stuff that we were attempting in last year's Six Nations before it got cut short. And that wasn't a different set of players, but that was definitely a different play style. And I'm hoping that the Autumn Nations Cup was just Farrell's quick fix because of how fucked up the lead up to it was, that he had no chance to implement anything. And I'm hoping that we do see something a little bit different, because there's definitely ability there. Like, you can't say that there's not a backline that has either Henshaw, who was brilliant at the weekend, Ringrose, or Bundyaki. If you want to put in McCluskey, you can. I wouldn't, but you definitely have Farrell in the centre there. There's plenty. Like, Larmer is an exciting player. James Lowe, if he gets fit, it's a brilliant player. Like, so there's so much potential for some, for a different play style than what we're used to. And I think that Farrell hinted at the start of last year's Six Nations that that's what he wanted to implement. And I personally want to believe, and I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, that this year has just thrown that thrown a massive spanner in the works, and that we will see it start from now on. So I'm going to withhold saying that this will definitely be the same play style. The selection of players might hint that, but I do think that all the players he selected have the ability to change up and play a different style of play.
Westy, do you want to give me an answer and not be a little girl like Sam?
I mean, I agree with what you both said, and that the selection here doesn't indicate great change to me. But again, I was looking at it earlier, and you'd actually be surprised at how little caps most of this squad have. I mean, there's only really 3 or 4 lads there that are north of 70 caps. Even I think Robbie Henshaw's only on like 49 or something. So like, there is quite a lot of low capage there, which is good. It does kind of symbolize that there might be some change coming. But I just think like there's a soft excuse at the minute where it's like, oh, we can't experiment too much because we need to finish well for financial reasons because of COVID and all that. It's like, well, look, realistically, we're the 3rd best team in this competition. Like, we can afford to experiment a little bit here. Like, we can afford to experiment against Italy. We can probably afford to experiment marginally against Scotland and Wales. Obviously not too much because they're quality outfits.
Scotland are going to come out swinging this tournament because this is their chance to really, everyone's kind of on the ropes, and I think this is Scotland's chance.
Okay, well, how about we go balls to the wall for Scotland, Wales, and Italy, and try and get our bonus point wins, and then we have a bit of fun against England and France. Like, let's change it up a little bit. Like, let's just.
So West, on your point, we've seen nothing change where we're going to be like, well, me personally, you can agree or disagree. I've seen nothing that has indicated that, we've actually got a chance against England and France now.
No, but apart from if they start Tyke Byrne in the second row, I think we improve our chances.
Or if France are missing 2, big players, but. Going against England, we've seen nothing change in the selection, or we haven't seen enough style of play yet, obviously. But in the selection, where we're like, okay, that's good now. We can give England a good rattle. We haven't seen anything like that.
I think a lot comes down to the first game against Wales. Like, we can only speculate until we see what happens on the pitch. I don't think that, again, COVID restrictions do put a bit of a hindrance on things, that there can't be drastic change because the camps can't be what they would have been. There was no like Carlton House over Christmas where they could have started introducing a few new ideas and testing out things. And there's been very little European rugby. So I think Andy Farrell said that today, that you don't really get as much of the high level stuff as we thought we would. But yeah, I think I look at this squad, I'm not overly excited. That kind of sums it up for me.
I think I would agree with that. Sam, I think, are you kind of the same, or are you going to withdraw from telling?
Yeah, no, I'm not hugely excited by it. I can't see personally how you can really step up to France or England if you play in any way like the style of play we've played against them the last few years. It's like running at a brick wall at this stage. But I think that there is definitely ability in that squad, if you do change the game plan, to try and open it up and cause a bit of chaos and run it at them and, get a bit wider. But if you try and beat up England or France, you're screwed. And we've seen that time and time again the last couple of weeks. Or last couple of years.
I hate to be a spoiler alert for you, Sam, but that's exactly what's going to happen.
I'm going on.
Can't wait. Six Nations 2021.
I'm putting my faith in Andy Farrell. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt.
He's on fucking thin ice for me, I'll tell you that. And I hope he knows that. Andy, if you're listening, you're on thin ice, mate, right? But come on the podcast. We'll have a chat. As always, lads, we'll leave it there because we could talk probably hours about this Irish squad, but we're not going to do it. All right, boys, we'll leave it there. I appreciate it as always, and we'll catch you next week. Good luck.
Cheers.